supporting Africa in a lot of ways. You know, you can't support in one way and then on the other way you're watching the economy go down. But I have a feeling that the global north will have to start really taking climate change seriously, because it's also happening in their own countries. They're seeing the effects of climate change even in their own countries. So this is a situation that the whole world has to come together. And I believe that Africa needs assistance, because most of our land is becoming arid and we can't get the food that we need, the food security. So it was brilliant. It was a difficult 3-week session, but again, we appealed to the African Union to allow the Pan-African Parliament the resources that it needs and the freedom that it needs to be able to effectively do the work that it's supposed to do. So it's like the European Parliament. You have the Pan-African Parliament, which looks at Africa. The
Africa affairs.
Yes.
Well, it seems the president, he's thinking that all these conferences leading up to, COP28, now that we are looking forward to also a climate session here in the country in November, is just a talk shop. Looking at what is being announced here, that we should cancel climate meetings.
Yes, and I totally support that, and I agree, because we've been having all these meetings. We've come from Egypt and we're going to the UAE. At the end of the day, there's no point in going to have discussions and you can't implement the promises that you've made. From Glasgow 2009, they promised 100 billion to help combat climate change. That was supposed to be the first amount, and they've never ever given that money, because they've always said, oh, we don't have a mechanism to raise it. Now there's a mechanism on the table in terms of a financial transactional tax. So I think 70% of the European countries have actually supported it. It's only Macron. So the Paris Agreement needs to be reviewed, implemented, and at the same time, we need goodwill. And I agree that when we have the climate change conference here in Kenya, the whole idea is for Africa to have a position, and I think it's about time that we get on the table to talk. There's a lot of things that were raised about our position, even in the UN. As a continent, the position of the continent of Africa in the UN Council. There's so many areas that we need to affirm. Africa is not the Africa of the time that you formed the UN. I think if you looked at the president's speech at that time, he actually said that it's about time that we review some of these happenings. And I believe that we now need to get on the table and not be part of the menu.
Thank you. Yeah, you need to be on the table and not be part of a menu. So if you're not on the table, you're part of a menu as well.
Yeah, I mean, you're being eaten up alive.
Right, thank you. Let me hear from Isaac Mora. Good morning, good to see you.
Morning.
Yes, just in light of what we can actually cognate with what she is talking about regarding climate change as well. Yesterday was World Environment Day. I don't know how many trees you planted.
I didn't plant any, it's good to be honest, because sometimes we pontificate ourselves, but I didn't even know it was World Environmental Day.
Yeah. World Environment Day.
So that means something is not very good. We need to do a lot of it. But yes, I have been a champion on environment. In fact, I remember way back in 2009, we were rallied about 25 young people from across the world in Bonn, Germany. Because of the work that we had done on environment, and there was about 1 out of only 3 from Africa. And a friend of mine is coming to Africa for the first time. That friend of mine is African, is black, and has never been to the continent, and we met there. And it's very interesting, because when I was writing a letter to Kenya at 60, which I did on May Day, on Madaraka Day, sorry. One of the things that I really was happy about was Wangari Maathai. The fact that she was way ahead of her time when she was telling us to plant trees. Now it's become a clarion call, and I'm very, very happy that President William Ruto actually is as a climate change a champion for Africa. And it is good because President Uhuru Kenyatta started it out. I remember looking for buses for schools, and he donated them. And every time he would do so, he would give 100 trees to every school that got a bus. And also now I can see very clearly the president, targeting very many hundreds of millions of trees to be planted so that we can be able to mitigate climate change. So I think it's a very good idea. When I was in the National Assembly in the 11th Parliament, I was in the Environment Committee, and I remember us passing the Anchor Act, and also the climate change bill by Wilbur Tichilo, the current governor of Vihiga. Yes. So we have very good legislation. I think we've been over-legislated. Some of the provisions of some of those laws should actually be in rules. But then the issue is about implementation. I think there is a very serious connection with land fragmentation and the housing, that you cannot, dichotomize. Because we are dividing our land into smithereens, and therefore they are becoming unviable for agriculture and also not very good for climate, because then you cannot therefore have huge forest cover. You cannot have good fauna that can protect the environment. So I think we need to look at it from that point of view. Of course, the depletion of our forests because of trees, because of wood and other alternative sources of building material, and of course gas as an alternative. You can see very clearly during Madaraka Day, President William Ruto even promised electric motorbikes. And even when he was opening the UN Habitat meeting, he was very, he declared that most of the delegates had been transported using electric buses. So it's really the way to go. I was also reflecting about about 10 years ago, when we were very proud about the discovery of oil. And we had 27 years GDP worth of oil that had been discovered then. It has become a cropper. Nothing has really come out of it. So it's a very interesting scenario, because on one hand, we'd want to exploit our fossil fuels, and Dr. Makali Mulu is here. The Moi Basin, I don't know what became of that, vis-a-vis the Turkana, versus now the issue of having biodiesels and renewable energy around solar also. The issue of solar farms, So there's a lot really that needs to be done. And I think Africa is at a crossroad. The issue of carbon credits and carbon markets, all of that. There's a lot that can be done in terms of energy. Energy, because also of clean energy like nuclear. And recently we had a talk with the head of atomic energy in Austria about the same. So how do we power our development? How do we power industrialization? How do we power our urbanizing cities? And the emerging cities, for that matter, is a whole thing that we cannot run away from. But also, the West must take it very seriously, because they are the polluters of the world, and yet we are supposed to slow our development to accommodate. So, are we going to leapfrog Kenya and Africa so that then we are able to get a cleaner, more sustainable energy, still that will be able to enable us to exploit our natural resources, and of course, take advantage of the youth dividend, democratic dividend, to actually, move our economies to the first world. That is something that we need to debate, because sometimes when you hear this conversation, Debal, it's also about slowing down our own development so that then we don't catch up with the rest of the world. Yeah.
All right, indeed. And of course, when you even talk about renewable energy, we know that Kenya had started exploring with the idea of geothermal energy since 1950s. It only took off in 1990s. We are the 8th largest geothermal so to speak, generator in the world. But it seems still power is an issue in this country. If we hack back into 1950s until now, I think that is such a glacial slowness to make sure that the generation of geothermal power is effective in this country. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, and good to see you. Yes, back from the recess. Yeah, it's been a long break. Yes. You can tell us what has been happening in the village. In Kilifi, we know also today the CS Interior will be back in Kilifi with the Shakahola tragedy. More graves.
I've been in the village for quite some time now, and you see, as a politician, you always have to touch base, and it is also very good to go down there and listen to what the people are saying, and solve a few of their problems, and also create new programs. I was actually busy trying to create my program for the next financial year for CDF and other funds, so that I am ahead of time. I always like planning for my people. But Kilifi has been fine. A lot of things happening there, especially the Shakahola issue. The CS has been there twice while I was there. And it is still very sad to know that they're still some people lying in graves. There are others are still in the forest, still fasting.
They're still fasting in the forest?
Yes, and the police are out there looking for them. And I want to commend the Kenya Police Service for what they are doing, and actually commend the team at the coast, because they've relentlessly been out there trying to trace the survivors and people who are still fasting. And I had a brief with the county commander yesterday, and she's telling me it's a difficult job for the police to run the terrain, and it is raining and deep in the forest, but they're still out there determined that they will find some people that are still alive and fasting. They have found a few that are still fasting. Some of them, interestingly, when they see the police, they say they have seen the devil. Because they were tuned to believe that, you see, on this journey to heaven, by their pastor, this journey to heaven, you will see the devil trying to discourage you from your journey.
And you'll be persecuted.
Yes, and this devil is most likely be in a police uniform. And therefore, when you see the police, you must run, because that is the devil. And therefore, they continue. Like, I think 1 week ago, we had one person who's been in the hospital. He refused to eat completely because he believes he's closer, inching closer to Jesus, and somebody is trying to prevent, that doctor is trying to prevent him from that path, and therefore eventually succumbed to death at the hospital. You know, so it's a sad situation. But C.S. Kindiki has been very relentless. He said we must get everybody out of that forest, and everybody that has been buried there must be exhumed, so that we have enough evidence against the pastor. Interestingly, you saw the pastor on TV when they're telling them, you know, they're not giving us bread. And we are starving in here in the cell, and yet he starved many people to death. That is,
and there's a cash crunch in the prisons as well.
Yes,
as we can see.
He should be the last one fed.
Yes. We I think in this country, I think there is always a kind of a way, a trajectory that when you are nearing the end of the financial year, you always have issues of cash crunch. And I think that is something that has been witnessed many years in this country, which we must end. What happens in 1st of June should happen on the next year. We should have money flow throughout. This idea of there are other departments, by the way, who do not spend their money. They wait until the last, and they do a huge procurement during the last day. Probably they use that to siphon money. There are other departments that by the time the financial year is ending, they don't have money. I read in the paper that now Treasury has agreed with governors that they will release a lot of money within this month. And I look at it and I ask myself, so where was this money? Now they have agreed a program that probably they will disperse over 80 billion within the month. So when these governors get this money, what will they do with it? They will go into a spending spree to finish the money. You see, they say, maliza pesa kabla mwaka hauja financial year haijaanza, or money will go back to Treasury. So they build that very negative culture of spending, even without plan, just spending because you must finish the money before the financial year ends. And I think this is a bad culture that we must stop. We must, as a nation, be able to give out the money as it's supposed to be given in the year, so that there is no this hurry to purchase, hurry to procure, because the financial
But they were warned by the Cabinet Secretary, Treasury, that be prepared for delays.
Yes.
You need to be amazingly patient, because we don't have any money to disburse. And this has been a critical issue so far. Even I think with the 32 billion shillings that is coming from the exchequer to the governors, they should be happy.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you see, that money becomes a problem for governors, because this money comes at a go towards the end of the financial year. Then there's something that will happen. I don't know, the expert on IFMIS is here, he will tell us. You see, they close this IFMIS for 1 month.
For audit?
Not for audit, because they're waiting for the new budget. Before they load the new budget, so they will close that IFMIS for a whole month. That becomes a big problem, because even hospitals cannot procure food. and when they close IFMIS, procurement, everything is closed for a whole month. We might just get into a crisis because funds are not available, IFMIS system is not available. Even MPs here will tell you that when that IFMIS is closed, they can't get mileage, they can't get, they cannot be paid money for their trips and all that because that IFMIS is closed. My thinking is we need to have an IFMIS that runs throughout, and preparedness. If we are preparing to load the budget, the new budget, then when the financial year closes, we should have a system that is able to load that in one day. So we move forward as a country. Because if you delay procurement and payments for 1 month, it means by the time you get into the other month, there's an overload, there's a huge load trying to get into the system. So Treasury needs to look at that. It will be very sad. People tell you, okay, you know to apply for your mileage before 30th of June, because if you don't do that, IFMIS will be closed, and if it is closed, you cannot access funds. I think we need to have a seamless system in this government, and I think the new people at Treasury should be able to do that, so that we have a seamless system at Treasury.
I think this is a good note that Dr. Makali is taking of course, being in the budget committee as well, IFMIS and the challenges of IFMIS. Yeah, that we've been knowing IFMIS has always had some drawbacks ever since it was installed. Is it a high time that we should install another system, because everyone seems to be hiding under IFMIS?
Okay.
And it seems there was a deliberate attempt to actually make sure it is gamed, that the system doesn't work seamlessly. I remember a while back we were talking with Governor Anwaigoro, when she was now the director of IFMIS in the Treasury. And it says she was very, very deliberate that that system was gamed from Treasury. So there's an attempt. The system is good, but people also make sure it's not working seamlessly. Should we review it?
A good question. But maybe before I get to that, good morning.
We tell us from what was happening in Kitui Central. We saw you also with the Deputy President.
And good morning, colleagues.
Good morning.
It's good to see.
This is sort of a resumption of Parliament today.
It looks like, and I'm happy that we have Esther Pasari's this show. It's the first time I'm sitting on the same table with her in a show like this.
Oh, really?
But we sit in many tables, in other tables together, because we are in the same coalition. Anyway, my weekend has been good, but not weekend really. Even the recess, I told you it's a working recess for us. Kiongozi here is lucky that he is not in finance or budget committee, so he was able to go down to Bolivia and get a bit of time to interact with these people. I was only able to go to Kitui over the weekends when we are not sitting as a budget committee, because normally we would sit from Monday to Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday we dash with the concerns and come back. But all said and done, it's been good. I've listened to my colleagues. Kitui is good. We thank God, actually. This weekend we got a bit of rains, so I can assure you now that this time we will have enough food for our people. Most of my area, Kitui Central, the other areas I might not get a lot of information, but for Kitui Central, we got some rains the last 1 week, and that is good for us. So we are happy. At the same time, we had visitors over the weekend. And the Deputy President came visiting my constituency, and also to support us in a fundraising for one of our top schools, St. Charles Luanga School. It's one of the top schools with many students, about 1,200 students. And because of the size of the school and the policy, the 100% transition from primary to secondary, the government has continuously pumped a lot of students to that school. You know that they started a 2-stream school, now it is a 5-stream school. And then you are saying, admit more students, you don't provide support for additional facilities. So what has happened over time, my CDF could not manage. So I just raised my hands and said, now, let things move, because I have other 57 schools which I take care of. And I'm sure my colleagues will agree with me that the new day schools are really a priority for us who are in Parliament, because they are making life very easy for the low income. Parents who are not able to take their students to boarding school would want to take their students for to day schools, which are actually relatively very cheap in terms of education. And if you support them with bursaries, you get more students going to school. So over time, you tend to push more resources that direction, not the big schools, the extra county and national schools. So the board planned an Arambe so that we could get support from the government, and it was a very successful Arambe. We managed to raise 61 million. Wow. So that was a big boost, mostly coming from the parents, and then our local people, the people, you know, the old boys. That's one of the schools that proposed. It has produced the top professionals in this country. So through the old boys and the parents, and then support from the government and support from the chief guest was regarding Gachagua, His Excellency, we were able to do well. But all said and done, a few politicians were there, me included. I was the only Azimio politician. The rest were Kenya Kwanza politicians, and you know, anytime when they come down there, even now when we will do the same, they want to lecture to us how we should run our affairs. So you know, I got a bit of lectures from a number of them, including 2 ministers and the 3 members of parliament. But the truth of the matter is, you know, the Bible says the truth will set us free. So I took that opportunity to tell the government the truth, because as an economist, I don't mix economics with politics. When I start talking economics, I talk economics. And so we were able to tell the government what is happening. As a result of that, you saw the following day the DP indicating that NMP was going to vote against the bill might not get development. That was actually basically informed by my statements in Kitui, because I did read a bit of other things. I said generally the bill might pass through parliament, but there are 2 things you kill Kenyans. And then as usual, when you get these guys coming to a place, you must indicate what is ailing your people. The government is 85% of the budget. We have 15 through the county government. So you must indicate what are the needs of your people. And basically what informed that is the fact that, and I did mention it in that meeting, that when you look at us as Kitui and the lower eastern region, we might not find many of us in the share register, the political share orders register, but we have very many in the taxpayers registered. So it means when it comes to the issues of development, you don't combine the two, because we pay taxes. And it was on that note I said that that's why you see Kenyans are saying, if then we are not seen like we are many in the taxpayers register, we can decide of dividing this country into 2, so that we have those who are shareholders having their own country, and those are non-shareholders having our own country, so that we pay our own taxes and push that agenda.
Don't you find that to be a very unfortunate statement that comes from the Deputy President, that if you don't really apply that particular route of voting for this particular bill, then you as a member of parliament from your constituency, you'll be starved of the development funds?
That's what I was saying. It's very unfortunate, because every Kenyan is a taxpayer. And normally what happens, Dibal, and I did mention that today, I said that there is no public money. All money in this country is taxpayers' money. So taxpayers pay their tax, and as a result of that, we give the Kenya Kwanza government our taxes, so that they implement their manifesto. That's how you see we all compete to be the president in this country. Because once you assume the presidency, then that gives you the mandate that all the taxes collected by Kenyans, you can now use them. You are the person to determine how they will be used with the help of parliament and other institutions. And basically, that's what we're saying then, since we all pay tax, when it comes to development, and this is going to be a serious subject as we move forward, the issue of equitable distribution of resources in this country. Because we are saying at times, when you look at the budget, and that's what we have been doing for the last 2 weeks, one of the issues we are raising as a budget committee, and we are in agreement, all of us, is that there needs to be equity, not equality, equity in sharing the budget. So that when you look at the budget in totality, you can see all regions of this country, to some extent, have been considered. Otherwise, they pay tax. And, you know, some of these statements coming from my friend, the DP, because he's my friend actually. We've done a lot of shows like this together. Even when we were there, I was reminding him of some of the issues we used to do. TV 47 with Maura, at times we would meet there. And so I was reminding that, my friend, what you need to bear in mind that we are not major shareholders when it comes to political matters, but we are paying taxes. So on the basis of that, it's very like food need bar. For a good road like Kibwezi, Kitui, Wingi Road, which has been now in place for about 4 or 5 years, very good road, helping us a lot, that none of our people has been compensated a single cent. And some of those guys are in slums. Imagine Owen,
yes.
People who are in slums. In my town, we have a place called Majengo, and we all know Majengos in every time. If you ask Pasares, Majengo in Nairobi, it looks like Majengo in Kitui look the same. Mombasa look the same. Majengo look the same. These guys were told, allow us to use your plots, because they live in plots. Allow us to use your plots, and then after the road is done, we compensate you. For the last 4 years, they have been living in plots. They are rented structures. You are already in a Majengo, and now you expect to rent a house. And at the same time, you see other roads which are just being started, and people are being compensated even before the road starts. These are the issues we are raising, and that's what you see Kenya saying is getting to a level where, the issue of own determination doesn't just come from nowhere. It's a contextual issue.
Thank you.
That if we prove the way we do our things, then there would be a way that everybody will feel a feeling of belonging, that I belong to Kenya.
Thank you.
But there's an important point before I conclude.
Just hold on.
The issue of the IFMIS.
The IFMIS, we'll talk about it.
Yes.
We'll come back to the IFMIS because
Yes.
broadly we're discussing the finance bill. I just wanted to come back to Esther Pasaris as well.
Yeah.
You have something to say before I ask you a question? Yes.
Yes. Media, okay?
Media.
The media has to be a bit more responsible when it reports, okay? I was at the function for Sopan's Thanksgiving.
Yes.
And I heard the Deputy President speaking, all right? And you took it completely out of context as media. And I think we have to love our country and be a bit more patriotic.
In what exactly did you take it out of context?
The Deputy President did not say that if you don't support the finance bill or you don't pay your taxes, you will not get development. He actually said that he was answering you that you had so many asks, and
Yes.
you asked for roads, you asked for so many things, and he says, you know what, how will we do all this if we don't have taxes? So you see, there's a different way to take it. English, it might not be our mother tongue, it's complex. It's like we need the taxes to be able to give the roads, right? But I didn't hear him say specifically that if you don't support the finance bill, you will not be able to get any support in terms of infrastructure. We all know that this government has enough structures and laws. We've got equalization fund, we've got devolution. There'll be counties that probably will not support the finance bill. But at the end of the day, they are right to get access to money. MPs, they are right to get access to money, whether GAF, whether CDF, is enshrined in our constitution. So for me, I feel that the media also have to be responsible when it comes to taking a statement. And I like the fact that the media always wants these bites. So Jabal, I think that was a misquote, because I was at that function, and he actually said it very clearly that Mheshimiwa here was asking for a lot of things, and he took to the podium and he told him, you know what, without taxes, we can't do those things. And it's a fact. Without taxes,
it's not been reported anywhere by the media. This is what Makali is saying.
No, it has been in the media, whether in the social media or
we have the clip. I've
yeah.
not heard anything like him really saying what you're saying. Yeah. But Makali was there on the ground. He can actually tell us the truth.
But
you are both of you on the ground. So
the issue is Dibal. What we are saying is, it's not that the reason why I was asking for these things is because currently we are paying taxes.
Yes, exactly.
Today, if the finance bill is not there, the current finance bill 2023, if we vote it no, and my prayer is that we vote it no, we'll be using the Finance Act 2022, which is already in place.
Yes.
So we're already paying taxes.
Yes.
The country is already projected to collect 2 point, and this is the point that people are missing. I've said the current tax bill is allowing the government to collect 2.1 trillion in revenue. With the 2023 proposed one, we are moving from 2.1 to 2.5.
Yeah.
The only money we are looking for additional money is 400 billion, basically around 400 billion. So even if status quo was to remain, 2.1 billion will be collected, and my Kitui people will be paying this 2.1. So why should they be denied roads?
All right.
I'm in the Lens Committee, and this is something that I'm actually going to follow up, because I think that no part of this country should be blackmailed based on its political position. We are supposed to make sure that there is fairness and equity. And when anyone takes office, like I've taken office in Nairobi, I know that there are people that didn't vote for me. There are constituencies that I didn't win in. But at the end of the day, when we take our oath of office, from presidency all the way down to MCA, we're supposed to serve everybody, irrespective of your political affiliation or irrespective of who you voted for. So I believe that from the Lands Committee, this is something that we should really pick up, because I know there are certain people who've been compensated for their land use, right? And I think it's important that everybody gets an equal share of the compensation. If the money is limited, there's no reason why his people should not have been compensated, especially if they let their land be used for infrastructure. So that is something that I definitely will take up with
I've seen there's someone at the course who has been actually compensated 1 billion shillings from government, but he had to go to the courts. So that now he can be compensated. I can just retrieve the story.
1.1 land.
Yes. Yeah. You remember that particular story? Yeah. So maybe sometimes the government has to be pushed. You really push the envelope for now for the compensation to really come. If they're slow in coming in, trying to compensate this, they promise, and they always say, the land belongs to government. So
I think I was in the Lands Committee in the last Parliament. But you need to...
Could we hear from Mauro, then we come to
Mauro?
you?
Yes.
He's been following. But I wanted just to pick up also on the issues of what we have on the Daily Nation today. Unga sugar prices to go up again. And this is even before the passage of the finance bill. And this is from the Central Bank survey that has come up with this particular. Now, we know Kenya now faces a maize crisis, as only 2 million out of expected 10 million bags of duty-free grain have been imported in 4 months.
I think the bill about maize, yes, but also crops are doing very well in the Shamba. And in another 2-3 months, we shall have a bumper harvest. And that will definitely help. Of course, in the short run, the government is intervening in terms of ensuring that we have more importation of affordable sugar, about 200,000 metric tons of sugar, because it is true, sugar has gone up quite a bit, but
it is bound to go up as well.
Yeah, but it will be contained, because there are measures that are being taken into place to ensure that the supply also matches demand. So that for me is the hope that I have. It has nothing to do with taxation, really. It's a question of supply, basically, and demand. That is, and of course, productivity, especially when you look at it from the fact that we are still in a post-COVID, post-election recession that is yet to really recover from all of this. Of course, because this government has only been in power for about 8 months, and so therefore we cannot really say that it's as a result of government policies per se. Of course, the subsidies that were there before may have cushioned us from experiencing acute shortages and also the pricing index. But I am very sure that it will stabilize in the long run. There is also the issue of dollar-denominated global economy, and we have lost value for the dollar from the time it was about 100 shillings to now 137. That's almost 40% of its value, which has had a very huge impact on supplies. It has had a very huge impact on pricing generally. So I think that look is okay. But I also want to hasten to say that if you expect a harvest by around August for maize, that will considerably, reduce the costing. And also by that time, I'm sure the 200,000 metric tons of sugar shall have also been imported. And of course, we expect, as a result of government liquidity, that also things will ease up, because also when you import, it requires you to also procure that kind of, using, sometimes government resources. So it's all interconnected, but it's not just Kenya. That's also what we need to see. I've just seen in the papers people protesting in Casablanca in Morocco against food prices. There were riots there. So it's not just Kenya that is experiencing. It's a global phenomenon. I also listened last week on Friday to someone from Singapore, and he was saying it was also the same case in his country. So it's not just a Kenyan phenomenon. Of course, it would pander to political overtones around this country, because it is popular to shoot from the hip, if then that is the rhetoric that helps your political narrative. But the truth of the matter is that this is not a crisis that has just come as a result of a new government.
All right, that story is on page 11 that we were talking about land. And you wanted to chime in a bit before we take a shot. The taxpayers to foot, this now will go back to the taxpayers. Taxpayers to foot 1 billion shillings bill after man wins Mutongwe naval land case. The decision by the government to compulsorily acquire land for the construction of housing section of Mutongwe Rifle Range and Naval Dockyard is to cost the taxpayers 1.14 billion shillings. And this was the judgment from the Land and Environment Court Judge Lucas Naikuni, observing that after compulsorily acquiring the land, the state had to compensate Najmuddin Durali Ali and even change its title, but had not done so by the time the case was filed. You were just to chime in when you were in the Lands Committee? Yes.
So I was in the Lands Committee in the 12th Parliament. And this issue of compensation does not start with this government. And I think Dr. Makalimolu should make it very clear that it is not this government, this William Ruto administration, that has issues with land compensation. This is a carryover from the previous system. And we have a lot of lands that were acquired for several reasons. And there were people who were not compensated. A case in mind is the case in Malindi. You know, the Malindi airport land was acquired. Yes. And the houses were brought down to expand the airport. But those people in Malindi up to today have not been paid. There's the case by Makali, but even Rachel Nyamai, who used to be our chairperson, I think a road passed by some area there and the houses were brought down.
The same road.
The same road. And those people were not compensated. This is a bad culture. Actually, this is a bad culture because the Constitution guarantees the rights to property, and that if the state must take your property for any reason, it must compensate you. And I think, but there has been this problem with the National Lands Commission and the Ministry of Lands and the state departments. Who pays? You know, that has been an issue of contention. For example, Ministry of Roads and Public Works, they're the people acquiring the land. They are supposed to set up a budget and give this money to National Lands Commission, who does valuation, you know, and say this land will cost this much. Now, I think there's someone who went to court and asked that question. Who will do valuation? If National Lands Commission are the people paying, can they also be trusted to do valuation? So that is one other problem. The other problem is the cartels around the department. You see, this compensation money is usually a lot of money. Look at this guy who has been awarded 1.4 billion. If he were to take that land to the market, would it have fetched that 1 billion? That land, would it have been fetched that? But who did the valuation for the court to actually determine that it is a billion plus for that land? Who pays? Now, government will need to give money to National Lands Commission to pay. It might take, although this guy has gotten a judgment, it might take him the next 4 years before a payment is met. So what am I trying to say? I'm trying to say, as we take forward this new government, I think it is our policy and the president's policy that we respect the right to property. And if compensations must be done, they must be properly budgeted for. Because you cannot budget for a road that is passing through someone's land. You want to acquire that land. Then you do not budget for the acquisition of the land, but you budget for the road. Certainly the BAL.
Right. Before you go to second, can I just take a short break? It is 7 o'clock on the nose, just to, of course, pay my bills as well. Then we circle back to you with the secondly. Right? Don't lose the track of thought there. You're watching Siasa Fiesta here on Morning Prime. We take a short break. We circle back with more. Don't go away.